Trenta con nuoi ko the fam toi. Du ko the law 6. There are thousands of reasons for people to sin in this world. It may be because of arguments about material passions or about love affairs, but for a human to become a perverted murderer, it can only be because their nature is too big and even they enjoy without any remorse for the crimes they have committed. Today I will continue to tell about a case that shook Taiwan in the early years of the 21st century. The horror case is not only in the way that the perpetrator did it, but also makes us feel scared. The way the perpetrator has disposed of the victim is extremely cruel. Hello, welcome to the channel. September 9, 1999. The weather is very nice and today is also a peaceful day on the Dai Giap River, Tainan. Therefore, anglers cannot ignore this fresh weather but quickly gather on this river to unleash their passion for fishing. While struggling to take out the fishing rod and prepare the bait, a man suddenly saw a round thing lying on the shore, so he turned to tell his friend. Curious, the group of people approached the view. The closer they get, the more people start to feel that the object has a slightly scary shape. Then it stops and immediately steps back, shaking, pulling out a cell phone to call the police. After all, what is it that can make a whole bunch of adults so scared? At this time, the police station also received a report. The police immediately appeared on the river. Initially, the police determined that the object was a human head, but it was difficult to determine the features of the face. Just guess this is the man with short hair. The police then guessed that the river might still have other clues, so they searched around. Indeed, they found another object 10 meters away. The police continued to find a pelvis, determined that this was the case of the victim. The authorities expanded the search area to continue, found a body part. After a DNA test determined these body parts were the same person. The police collected fingerprints on the left hand but compared the database, there were no matches. Forensic investigation said that the victim had tattooed eyebrows around his eyes. Feeling suspicious about the victim's gender, they checked the pelvis and concluded that the victim was a woman. However, no one reported it to anyone after that. Body missing, nothing more. The number of clues that the police have is extremely meager, has made the case gradually come to a standstill. 12 days after, about 1:21 a.m. on September 21, 1999, a historic 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck Nantou County, causing unprecedented damage with more than 2,400 deaths. Survivors in turn contacted their families. The whole city now takes care of the reconstruction. After the wreckage in this disaster, a famous damaged scenic spot that was focused on repairing is Nantou County Lake in Nguitrai Town, Nantou district. The lake is nearly 8 square kilometers wide and about 37 kilometers in circumference, is a natural freshwater lake. Taiwan's largest natural. The northern half of the lake is shaped like the sun, the back half of the lake is shaped like a crescent moon, so it is called the soul of the moon in the Qing dynasty. This is one of the sites. On October 8, a group of workers repaired the landscape of Nantou County Lake. While repairing it, they saw an arm floating on the water. They quickly alerted the police. The police arrived and after hours of salvage found 2 heads and many body parts. The coroner determined the dead to be 2 women aged between 17 and 25. Due to the inability to recognize faces, police could only call for information from homes whose daughters had gone missing recently because of the recent earthquake. Many families have not found the body of their loved one. Therefore, this appeal quickly attracted many people's attention. Suspecting 2 heads of blood relation, police compared DNA to determine that these are 2 sisters. In addition to this detail, finally had relatives to identify the person coming as Mr. Wang. As soon as he saw the remains, he identified these as 2 daughters and burst into tears. Through the police chat, there were more important details. In addition to his 2 children, his wife also disappeared not long ago. This reminds the police of the head-to-head case on Dai Giap Bank nearly 2 months ago, because the victim that time was the same as these 2 victims. What the police found were all incomplete body pieces. The authorities immediately collected the DNA of 3 victims and also Mr. Wang's results showed that they were a family. After learning both his wife and 2 daughters lost their bodies and were beheaded, leaving Mr. Wang completely devastated. He sat down like a lost soul. Then Mr. Wang also contacted his wife's family and informed them of this heartbreaking incident. At this time, the police also discovered a strange thing. Mr. Wang's mother-in-law was living in Foley Town near the epicenter. After the earthquake, she was very worried when she called but did not contact heard any information about a daughter named Fan. Now the police also know more information that Mr. Vuong and his wife are separated, so Fan's mother did not call Mr. Vuong to ask for information. Daughter. The strange thing is the body of mère was found before the earthquake happened. However, after that terrible earthquake, Mr. Vuong's mother-in-law still received a call from her daughter, recounting that after many days without receiving news, the phone finally rang, and when she picked up the phone, a voice rang. Up, Fan here, I'm fine, now I have to go to Taipei to have some work, I'll be back soon. Before the old woman could ask anything more, the phone was switched off. Although she knew her daughter was safe and unharmed. But instead of being happy, Fan's mother was worried. Her daughter's voice on the phone was extremely rude and strange. Fan had never called her mother, nor had she ever called her mother. Never say your name when talking to grandma. Is the person on the phone really a girl? She is also not sure of the identity. The last 3 dead people have been confirmed. The police determined that the killer is likely the same person. According to the investigation, Mr. Wang and his wife have been separated for many years, and have 2 daughters. Are studying at university. Police went to a hotel in Taishung where Ms. Fan worked to investigate. After getting testimony from fellow employees in the hotel, it was known that Ms. Fan was famous for her hard work and had a lot of savings. The police immediately suspected that her savings could be the culprit's motive, so they quickly went to the bank to investigate the transaction information. There the police learned that after her death 2 million yuan in bank savings had been withdrawn, and the car was also sold by her lover, Wu Yinghong. According to the police investigation, NGO is a taxi driver or waits for guests at the hotel where Fan works. The two loved each other and Fan's 2 daughters both knew later. When her lover disappeared, NGO did not worry about reporting to the police but also trespassed on her property. After all the information the police gathered, the police found that the person who could kill the victim was the one who planned the call to the victim's mother. This proves the killer definitely the person only familiar with the victim could know the name and information of the victim's mother, so investigators identified NGO as the leading suspect and the victim's husband, Mr. Vuong, as the second suspect. Immediately after confirming the suspect, the police began investigating Mr. Vuong. First, about NGO Eunghong, the police also began to expand the search after conducting an investigation to take testimony. Mr. Vuong was extremely cooperative. Mr. Vuong said that he and his wife have been separated for many years. He also has a new family. Although he is separated from his wife, he and his children still keep in touch. Although not often but still know each other's life. Sometimes on holidays his children also visit him. He also knows that his wife has a new lover through the stories of 2 daughters. When his ex-wife and 2 children disappeared, he didn't know anything. At that time, he just went to work as usual and then returned home, and his residence was not close to where my parents live, only after receiving it. News of the police announcement because he was worried that he could not call his children, plus the earthquake that caused damage to 2,400 people, he immediately went to the station. But in his heart, he always hoped that the 2 victims were not his 2 daughters. But he did not expect that after coming here, Mr. Vuong knew that not only his 2 children but also his ex-wife had died. Not only that, but their bodies were also not intact. Through Mr. Vuong's testimony, the police immediately investigated his colleagues and extracted the cameras at the place where Mr. Vuong worked the day the victim was murdered, determined Mr. Vuong had an alibi. Cornered towards suspect number 1 NGO Eunghong. The police began to arrest Wu in Taishung when he had already bought a plane ticket to go abroad with his new girlfriend. When brought back to investigate, Wu insisted that he was innocent, saying that Mrs. Fan's mother and daughter were when going to Hong Kong to travel. The police in turn brought the evidence to allege NGO's lie. The record of buying plane tickets of Fan's mother and daughter that NGO gave was from 3 months ago but did not go to Thailand. Right to Hong Kong. This trip was accompanied by Korn and all 3 returned home. Then also mentioned that NGO went to the bank to withdraw her savings and the evidence that NGO sold her car to someone else. NGO still refused to confess at this time. The police gave photographic evidence of 3 headless bodies indicating that it was the mother and son, Fan, and NGO was now almost devastated. At the same time, a group of police raids entered the house. NGO found a desk calendar with the dates of August 23rd, September 4th, September 5th and September 16th both circled in red. Found that there were no words to hide the crime NGO confessed to. According to him, these were the days when NGO killed, dismembered, and dismembered. NGO testified that he and Mrs. Fan had lived together for a few years. But it was not clear that NGO then had an affair, fueling the growing conflict, especially about money. According to NGO, he gives all his income to Mrs. Fan every month. Mrs. proposal to buy a house with this money, but must be in the name of her 2 daughters. NGO admits that he is not good at communicating, so even though he disagrees with her, he kept it all to himself until Fan brought up these thoughts, anger erupting within him, determined to kill his lover in the most painful way possible. He told me that at 13 o'clock on August 22nd, before Mrs. Fan went to work, he added sleeping pills to the pot of Chinese medicine she took every day as a habit. After Mrs. Fan drank it immediately, she fell into a coma. After realizing that the drug was absorbed, NGO killed and chopped her body to make it easier to hide. The Fan's head was also cut off from her neck. All parts of Miss Fan's body were stuffed by him in the refrigerator. Then he calmly lived with Mrs. Fan's body in the freezer for another 2 weeks, then carried it away for burial on a tributary of the river in the late night. Fan's mother and daughter were very close, so when unable to contact her mother, the 2 girls called and asked NGO. He said she went to Hong Kong to relieve stress and didn't want to worry her children, so she didn't say anything. However, her youngest daughter still felt it. There was something suspicious, so he constantly searched and called NGO. Seeing that, NGO decided to destroy the weeds at the root. NGO called her youngest daughter and asked her to come to Taishung to wait for her mother to return, telling her to take her to experience the newly opened spa. When she got home, NGO Lua she took sleeping pills and repeated the same tricks as she did with her mother. Seeing that not only his mother but also his sister suddenly couldn't contact, a few days later the eldest daughter came to see NGO. Not beyond his expectation, NGO continued to take action with the big girl. After that, both the bodies of the 2 sisters were cut up, put in a bag, and brought all of them to Nhat Ngayat Lake. NGO thought that the body bags would drift away with the current, but he did not expect it to be. Hydropower reservoir. The floodgates were blocked with barbed wire to filter out the body bags, so they were stuck here until the earthquake happened. The lake management had to open the floodgates so the contests may have emerged to expose the crime he committed. After the earthquake, NGO asked his girlfriend to pretend to be Mrs. Fan to call her mother, but the difference was discovered. No matter how old, how could a mother fail to notice the peculiarity of her child? Before NGO's bad accusations about the deceased, Ms. Fan's friends and colleagues spoke up. According to them, since she fell in love with NGO, Mrs. Fan worked overtime until the Lunar New Year and did not take a break. On the contrary, when she knew that her lover had money, NGO neglected to go to the street just to flirt with girls and then meet new people, but still forgiven by Mrs. In fact, after the murder, NGO immediately withdrew all his savings and sold Fan's car. So who is the more fearsome money lover? In the end he still remained calm. There was no point in saying sorry, I won't be executed anyway, nothing to fear. Until July 16, 2001 NGO was shot. There are many reasons for people to commit crimes, but just because of money, to act as cruel as the perpetrator of this case is unforgivable, even to the end. He also doesn't feel any guilt. He kills people with plans from killing to dismembering and disposing of the body, all showing that he has an extremely barbaric mentality. If we call this a murderer is probably too light for him. Everything he did shows that he was originally a cruel and calm demon before his crimes. This case was officially closed, but the pain of losing a child and losing a loved one of the victim's family persists over time, and the brutality of the murderer who beheaded to dispose of the funeral is always a shivering obsession when recalling. How do you see the case today? Please leave a comment below the description. Hello and see you in the next videos. Please subscribe to the channel to receive the latest notifications about real cases in the world. Thanks.